The United States, a nation built on immigration, grapples with a contentious issue: expedited deportations. This policy, designed to swiftly remove certain immigrants, has become a flashpoint in the national debate. It's about families separated, dreams shattered, and the fundamental right to seek a better life. At the heart of this debate lies a significant policy shift: the expansion of expedited deportations beyond border areas. Previously, this fast-track removal process primarily targeted undocumented immigrants apprehended within 100 miles of the border and within 14 days of entering the United States. However, the Trump administration broadened this scope, empowering Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, to expedite deportations anywhere within the country, for individuals who have resided in the United States for less than 2 years. Proponents argue that it acts as a deterrent, discouraging illegal immigration and safeguarding national security by swiftly removing individuals deemed a threat. Opponents, however, raise serious concerns about due process and fairness. To fully grasp the significance of the current debate, it's crucial to understand the historical context of deportations in the United States. From the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 to the mass deportations of Mexican citizens during the Great Depression, the United States has a long and complex history of using deportation as a tool to shape its immigration policy. These historical events, often marked by discrimination and prejudice, provide valuable lessons for understanding the current climate. The legacy of these past policies continues to shape the debate over immigration today. Understanding this historical context is essential for engaging in a nuanced and informed discussion about the current state of immigration enforcement in the United States. Expedited removal, the process by which certain immigrants can be swiftly deported from the United States without a full hearing before an immigration judge, has undergone significant changes over the years. Originally introduced in 1996, this policy was initially intended for a narrow category of individuals, those apprehended at or near the border who had recently entered the country illegally. However, over time, the scope of expedited removal has expanded considerably. Proponents of the policy argue that it is a necessary tool for upholding immigration law, deterring illegal immigration, and protecting national security. Critics, however, argue that the expansion of expedited removal has come at the expense of due process and fairness. One of the most significant developments in recent years has been the expansion of expedited removal beyond border areas. Previously, this policy primarily targeted individuals apprehended within 100 miles of the border and within 14 days of entering the country. However, the Trump administration dramatically broadened this scope, empowering Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, to expedite the deportations of individuals anywhere within the country who have resided in the U.S. for less than 2 years and cannot prove their legal presence. This expansion, announced in 2019, marked a significant departure from previous practice and sparked immediate controversy. The expansion of expedited removal has faced intense scrutiny and legal challenges, with critics arguing that it undermines fundamental due process rights and increases the risk of wrongful deportations. Under expedited removal, individuals apprehended by immigration authorities are not afforded a full hearing before an immigration judge. Critics argue that this process is inherently flawed, as it places too much power in the hands of immigration officers who may lack the legal training or impartiality to make such weighty decisions. Behind the legal battles and policy debates lie the deeply personal stories of individuals whose lives have been upended by expedited removal. Consider the case of Maria, a single mother from El Salvador who fled to the United States with her 2 young children to escape gang violence. After residing in the U.S. for just over a year, Maria was apprehended during a routine traffic stop and placed in expedited removal proceedings. Despite her pleas for asylum and her desperate attempts to explain the danger she would face if returned to El Salvador, Maria was deported, separated from her children, and sent back to the very violence she had fled. Maria's story is not an isolated incident. The expansion of expedited removal has had a profound impact on immigrant communities across the United States, creating a climate of fear and uncertainty that has reverberated throughout these communities. The fear of being apprehended and swiftly deported has led many immigrants to withdraw from public life, limiting their interactions with government agencies, law enforcement, and even healthcare providers. This climate of fear has broader societal implications, as it erodes social cohesion, hinders economic productivity, and weakens the social safety net. The expansion of expedited deportations has further inflamed the already heated debate surrounding immigration in the United States, exposing deep divisions within the American public and political landscape. On one side of this divide stand those who view immigration through a lens of economic pragmatism and national security concerns. On the other side of the spectrum are those who embrace a more humanitarian perspective, emphasizing the contributions of immigrants to American society and the moral imperative to provide refuge to those fleeing persecution or seeking a better life. The debate over expedited deportations is further complicated by partisan politics, with Republicans generally favoring stricter immigration enforcement measures and Democrats typically advocating for more lenient policies and a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. The expansion of expedited deportations did not occur in a vacuum. It unfolded within a specific political climate characterized by heightened anxieties about immigration national security concerns and a resurgence of nationalist sentiment. The Trump administration's rise to power in 2016 marked a turning point in United States immigration policy, ushering in an era of heightened enforcement and a more restrictive approach to immigration. The political climate surrounding immigration has become increasingly polarized in recent years, with both sides of the debate often resorting to inflammatory rhetoric and demonizing their opponents. The debate over expedited deportations highlights a fundamental tension within U.S. immigration policy, the challenge of balancing the need for enforcement with the recognition of immigrants' humanity and contributions to American society. This tension is not new. It has been woven into the fabric of American history since the nation's founding. On the one hand, the U.S. has a vested interest in upholding its immigration laws, protecting its borders, and ensuring the integrity of its immigration system. This includes identifying and removing individuals who have entered the country illegally, overstayed their visas, or committed crimes that render them ineligible to remain in the U.S. Enforcement is essential for maintaining public safety, deterring unauthorized migration, and preserving the rule of law. On the other hand, the U.S. also has a long tradition of welcoming immigrants and providing refuge to those fleeing persecution or seeking a better life. This humanitarian impulse is rooted in the nation's founding ideals of liberty, opportunity, and the pursuit of happiness. Many Americans believe that the U.S. has a moral obligation to provide a safe haven for those in need, and that closing the door on immigrants runs counter to the nation's values and history as a beacon of hope for the world. Finding the right balance between these competing imperatives is a complex and delicate task. It requires a nuanced approach that recognizes the legitimate need for enforcement, while also acknowledging the human cost of deportation policies and the contributions of immigrants to American society. It also demands a commitment to due process, fairness, and the protection of fundamental rights, ensuring that individuals are not unjustly punished or denied the opportunity to have their case heard. Beyond the moral and legal dimensions, the debate over expedited deportations also raises important economic questions about the costs and consequences of removing undocumented immigrants from the U.S. While proponents of stricter enforcement often cite the economic burden of undocumented immigration, A growing body of research suggests that the economic impact of deportation is complex and multifaceted, with both potential costs and benefits to consider. On the cost side, deportation can disrupt families and communities, reduce the size of the labor force, and decrease consumer spending. When undocumented immigrants are deported, their families are often left behind, facing economic hardship and emotional distress. Businesses that rely on immigrant labor may struggle to find workers to replace those who have been deported, potentially leading to decreased productivity and economic output. On the other hand, deportation can also potentially lead to increased wages for some native-born workers as the supply of labor decreases. It can also reduce the demand for public services, such as education and healthcare, potentially freeing up resources for other uses. However, the magnitude of these effects is uncertain and likely varies depending on factors such as the skill level of the deported workers and the overall health of the economy. The economic impact of deportation is further complicated by the costs associated with apprehending, detaining, and removing individuals from the country. These costs can be substantial, placing a significant strain on government budgets. Moreover, the focus on deportation can divert resources from other enforcement priorities, such as combating transnational crime or enhancing border security. While the U.S. grapples with the challenges of expedited deportations, it is important to recognize that the issue of immigration enforcement is not unique to the United States. Around the world, nations are grappling with similar questions about how to manage migration flows, balance security concerns with humanitarian obligations, and address the realities of unauthorized migration. Examining deportation policies in a comparative light can provide valuable insights into different approaches to immigration enforcement, their effectiveness, and their social and economic consequences. Some countries, such as Canada and many European nations, have adopted a more lenient approach to immigration enforcement, focusing on integration and offering pathways to citizenship for undocumented immigrants who meet certain criteria. Other countries, such as Australia and some Gulf states, have implemented stricter immigration policies, emphasizing border security, detention, and swift deportation of those deemed to be in violation of immigration law. These varying approaches reflect different historical experiences with immigration, cultural attitudes towards newcomers, and economic and security concerns. By studying deportation policies in a comparative context, policymakers and advocates can gain a deeper understanding of the potential consequences of different approaches, identify best practices, and develop more effective and humane solutions to the challenges posed by unauthorized migration. This global perspective can help to foster a more informed and nuanced debate about immigration enforcement, moving beyond simplistic solutions and recognizing the complexities of this multifaceted issue. The expansion of expedited deportations has drawn sharp reactions from government officials, reflecting the deep partisan divide on immigration policy. Proponents argue it deters illegal immigration and protects national security, while opponents denounce it as cruel and contrary to American values. The policy underscores the deep ideological fissures in the U.S., making it difficult to find common ground and enact meaningful reform. For immigrants living in the United States, particularly those who are undocumented, the expansion of expedited deportations has cast a long shadow, fueling fear and uncertainty in communities already grappling with the challenges of navigating life in the shadows. The policy has transformed daily routines into potential encounters with immigration authorities, turning schools, workplaces, and even places of worship into sites of anxiety and apprehension. Maria, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who has lived in the United States for over a decade, shared her story, her voice trembling with emotion. "I live in constant fear of being separated from my children, of being detained and deported without warning. Every time I leave my house, I wonder if it will be the last time I see my family. The stress is unbearable." The fear of deportation permeates every aspect of life for undocumented immigrants, impacting their access to healthcare, education, and employment opportunities. Many are reluctant to report crimes, even when they are the victims, fearing that contact with law enforcement could lead to their detention and deportation. This climate of fear has a chilling effect on community life. eroding trust in institutions and hindering the integration of immigrants into the broader society. Carlos Garcia, an immigration attorney working with undocumented communities, observes, "The psychological toll of this policy is immense. People are terrified, constantly looking over their shoulders, afraid to leave their homes. It's creating a climate of fear and distrust that impacts entire communities." The stories of immigrants living under the specter of expedited deportations reveal the human cost of this policy, highlighting the fear, anxiety, and uncertainty it inflicts upon individuals, families, and communities across the United States. The expansion of expedited deportations has faced staunch resistance from immigrant rights groups and legal advocates. They argue the policy violates due process rights and harms vulnerable populations. The ACLU has filed lawsuits, organized protests, and mobilized communities. They contend the policy risks wrongful deportations, especially for asylum seekers. Lee Gallant of the ACLU stated, "The policy is a betrayal of justice." Immigrant rights groups continue to fight in the courts and streets. The expansion of expedited deportations has further polarized public opinion on immigration in the United States, reflecting the deep ideological divisions that characterize this contentious issue. While the policy enjoys support from those who favor stricter immigration enforcement, it faces strong opposition from those who view it as inhumane and contrary to American values. According to a 2019 Pew Research Center survey, a majority of Americans, 62%, say that immigrants strengthen the country because of their hard work and talents, while 35% say immigrants are a burden because they take jobs, housing, and healthcare. However, the survey also found significant partisan divisions on this issue, with Republicans far more likely than Democrats to view immigrants as a burden, 63% versus 15%. These partisan divisions are evident in public opinion polls on expedited deportations. A 2020 Gallup poll found that 74% of Republicans approve of the policy, compared to just 18% of Democrats. These findings underscore the challenges of building consensus on immigration policy in a deeply divided political climate. The debate over expedited deportations is often framed as a zero-sum game, pitting the interests of native-born Americans against those of immigrants. This framing ignores the complex realities of immigration, including the economic contributions of immigrants, the cultural enrichment they bring to American society, and the humanitarian imperative to provide refuge to those fleeing persecution. As the United States grapples with the challenges of immigration, it is essential to move beyond simplistic narratives and engage in a more nuanced and informed public discourse that recognizes the complexities of this multifaceted issue. The expansion of expedited deportations has intensified the moral dilemma at the heart of the immigration debate in the United States: how to balance the need for enforcement with the recognition of immigrants' humanity and the nation's commitment to due process and compassion. Finding common ground in this polarized landscape requires a willingness to engage in respectful dialogue, acknowledge the legitimate concerns of all sides, and seek solutions that uphold both the rule of law and the dignity of all individuals. One potential avenue for progress lies in reforming the expedited removal process itself, ensuring that it is applied fairly and humanely, with adequate due process protections for those subject to its reach. This could include providing access to legal counsel, expanding opportunities for judicial review, and exempting vulnerable populations such as asylum seekers and victims of trafficking from expedited removal. Another approach involves addressing the root causes of migration, such as poverty, violence, and lack of opportunity in sending countries. By investing in economic development, promoting human rights, and addressing climate change, the United States can help to create conditions that make it less likely for people to leave their homes in the first place. Ultimately, finding a just and humane approach to immigration requires a shift in perspective, moving away from the divisive rhetoric that often dominates the debate and embracing a more inclusive vision of American identity, one that recognizes the contributions of immigrants and the value of diversity. As Rabbi Jonathan Sacks wisely observed, The test of a civilization is in how it treats its strangers. The United States, a nation built on immigration, has a moral imperative to live up to its ideals and create an immigration system that is both just and compassionate. The expansion of expedited deportations has had a devastating impact on families across the United States, tearing apart parents from children, spouses from partners, and siblings from one another. The swift and often unyielding nature of the process leaves little room for families to prepare for separation, navigate legal complexities, or seek alternative solutions. For many families, the trauma of separation is compounded by the uncertainty of reunification, as they grapple with the daunting prospect of rebuilding their lives across borders, often facing significant legal, financial, and emotional obstacles. One such family torn apart by expedited deportation is the Hernandez family. Jose Hernandez, a construction worker who had lived in the United States for over a decade, was apprehended during a routine traffic stop and placed in expedited removal proceedings. Despite having no criminal record and being the sole provider for his family, including his wife Maria and their 3 U.S.-born children, Jose was deported to Mexico within a matter of weeks. Maria, left to care for their children alone, struggles to make ends meet, working long hours to support her family while grappling with the emotional toll of her husband's absence. Their children, once full of life and laughter, now bear the weight of their father's deportation, struggling with feelings of abandonment, anxiety, and uncertainty about the future. The Hernandez family's story is not unique. Countless families across the country have been torn apart by expedited deportations, leaving behind a trail of broken hearts, shattered dreams, and a profound sense of loss. For these families, the policy is not merely an abstract political debate. It is a lived reality with devastating consequences that ripple through generations. The expansion of expedited deportations has also had a profound impact on young immigrants brought to the United States as children, often referred to as dreamers. These individuals, who have spent most of their lives in the United States attending American schools, speaking English fluently, and contributing to their communities, often face deportation to countries they barely remember, separated from the only homes they have ever known. One such dreamer, Ana, was just 7 years old when her parents brought her to the United States from El Salvador, fleeing violence and poverty in search of a better life. Growing up in Los Angeles, Ana excelled in school, participated in extracurricular activities, and dreamed of becoming a doctor. However, her dreams were shattered when she was apprehended during a routine traffic stop and placed in expedited removal proceedings. Despite having no criminal record, being a DACA recipient, and having built a life in the United States, Ana was deemed ineligible for relief from deportation and deported to El Salvador, a country she had not visited since she was a child. Forced to navigate an unfamiliar culture, language barriers, and limited economic opportunities, Ana struggles to rebuild her life, her dreams of a brighter future seemingly out of reach. Ana's story highlights the plight of countless dreamers who face the prospect of deportation to countries they barely remember, separated from the families, communities, and opportunities they have worked so hard to build. For these individuals, deportation represents not only a physical displacement, but also a profound sense of loss, as they are forced to leave behind the only homes they have ever known and the dreams they have nurtured for a better future. For asylum seekers fleeing persecution, violence, and human rights abuses in their home countries, the expansion of expedited deportations presents a particularly harrowing obstacle, often forcing them to choose between returning to the dangers they fled or facing detention and deportation in a country that feels increasingly hostile and unwelcoming. Aisha, a young mother from Honduras, embarked on a perilous journey to the United States with her 2 young children, fleeing a life marred by domestic violence and gang threats. Arriving at the United States-Mexico border, she presented herself to immigration authorities, seeking asylum and hoping to find safety and a chance at a better life for her children. However, instead of finding refuge, Aisha was placed in expedited removal proceedings, her claims of fear and persecution dismissed without a full hearing before an immigration judge. Facing the prospect of being deported back to the very dangers she had risked everything to escape, Aisha felt trapped, her hopes for a safe and secure future for her children seemingly dashed. Aisha's story illustrates the plight of countless asylum seekers who, instead of finding protection and due process under United States law, are subjected to expedited removal, a process that often fails to adequately assess their claims of fear and persecution, leaving them vulnerable to being returned to harm's way. The expansion of expedited deportations has further eroded the United States' commitment to its international obligations to protect refugees, undermining the nation's moral standing on the global stage. For those deported from the United States, the journey does not end at the border. Many face the daunting task of rebuilding their lives in unfamiliar countries, often grappling with language barriers, limited economic opportunities, social stigma, and the psychological trauma of displacement. Miguel, a former restaurant worker deported to Mexico after living in the United States for over 2 decades, describes the challenges of starting over in a country he barely recognizes. It's like being a stranger in your own land. I left Mexico when I was a teenager and now I'm back, but everything has changed. I have to start from scratch, but it's hard to find work, to make ends meet, to feel like I belong. The challenges faced by deportees extend beyond economic hardship. Many struggle with the psychological trauma of separation from loved ones, the loss of social networks, and the feeling of being uprooted from their homes and communities. The stigma of deportation can also make it difficult to find work, access housing, or reintegrate into society. Despite these challenges, many deportees demonstrate remarkable resilience, drawing on their inner strength, community support, and entrepreneurial spirit to rebuild their lives. They form new connections, learn new skills, and create opportunities for themselves and their families, often becoming agents of change in their communities of return. The impact of expedited deportations extends far beyond the individuals and families directly affected, creating a ripple effect that reverberates throughout entire communities. Schools experience increased absenteeism and academic struggles as children cope with the trauma of parental separation. Businesses face labor shortages and economic losses as valued employees are apprehended and deported. And communities as a whole grapple with a climate of fear and uncertainty as the threat of deportation hangs heavy in the air. In towns and cities across the United States, community centers, churches, and nonprofit organizations have become sanctuaries for families torn apart by deportation, offering legal aid, emotional support, and practical assistance to those struggling to navigate the complexities of the immigration system and the aftermath of separation. Father Juan Carlos, a Catholic priest working with immigrant communities in Chicago, reflects on the toll of expedited deportations. We are witnessing a moral crisis unfolding in our midst. Families are being ripped apart, children are living in fear, and communities are being torn asunder. We must find a better way, one that upholds the dignity of all people and recognizes the contributions of immigrants to our society. The expansion of expedited deportations has left an indelible mark on the social fabric of the United States, eroding trust in institutions, fueling fear and anxiety, and undermining the values of unity, compassion, and the pursuit of justice for all. As the nation grapples with the consequences of this policy, it is essential to listen to the voices of those most affected, to bear witness to their stories of loss and resilience, and to work towards a more just and humane approach to immigration enforcement, one that upholds the dignity of all people and recognizes the contributions of immigrants to the rich tapestry of American society. The expansion of expedited deportations in the United States represents a pivotal moment in the nation's ongoing struggle to define its relationship with immigration. This policy shift has far-reaching consequences for individuals, families, and communities across the country. The issue of expedited deportations touches upon fundamental questions of due process, human rights, and national identity. The stories shared paint a stark picture of the human cost of this policy. Families torn apart, dreams shattered, and communities living in fear are the tangible consequences. The expansion of expedited deportations has deepened the climate of fear and uncertainty in immigrant communities. Beyond the immediate human impact, it raises profound questions about the future direction of U.S. immigration policy. The policy reflects a broader trend towards stricter enforcement and a more restrictive approach to immigration. As the United States stands at this crossroads, it is essential to engage in a thoughtful national conversation about immigration. This conversation must address the balance between enforcement and compassion, the economic impact of immigration, and the integration of newcomers. Creating a more just and humane approach to immigration requires addressing both the symptoms and root causes of unauthorized migration. It demands upholding the rule of law while recognizing the inherent dignity of all individuals. Reforming the expedited removal process is crucial, ensuring fairness and due process. This includes access to legal counsel and judicial review. Addressing root causes like poverty and violence is essential. By investing in development and human rights, the U.S. can reduce migration pressures. Collaboration with other nations is key to a humane global migration system. Embracing diversity and immigrant contributions can create a brighter future.